Picture this: armored SUVs race through a dusty border road at dusk. No flags, no patches, no unit crest. Just men in plate carriers, earpieces crackling, protecting a cargo that a government won't publicly admit exists. If something goes wrong, the official line is simple: they weren't ours. Welcome to the shadow world of private military companies, PMCs, where the lines between soldier, security contractor, and mercenary blur into a gray you only notice when it's too late. Today, we're pulling back the curtain. We'll explore how PMCs operate, who hires them, the loopholes that keep them in business, the headline-making disasters that forced reforms, and the next frontier, from drones to cyber, where private warriors fight invisible wars. In a few minutes, I'll reveal the single contract clause used by many PMCs that gives clients plausible deniability, and why that makes accountability so hard. What exactly is a PMC? A private military company is a business that sells military-adjacent services, from armed protection and convoy security to training, intelligence analysis, logistics, and sometimes direct support in conflict zones. PMCs insist they're not mercenaries, a term tied to illegality and unlawful combatant status. Instead, they sign contracts with states, corporations, international organizations, or NGOs. The difference? Mercenaries fight for pay with no legitimate chain of command. PMCs claim a legal framework, corporate oversight, and rules of engagement approved by a client. Their pitch is simple: we move fast when governments can't. They offer surge capacity, specialized skills, and deniability, not just for covert ops, but for mundane needs like guarding aid convoys, embassies, oil fields, and shipping lanes. Before we're done, we'll test a myth. Do PMCs actually save money compared to national militaries? Or do they just move costs off the books? A short history of a long shadow. Private warfare is older than the nation-state. Medieval rulers hired condottieri. Empires issued letters of marque to privateers. The modern PMC surge, however, traces to the post-Cold War drawdown. As large militaries shrank, specialized veterans entered the market. In the 1990s, firms like Executive Outcomes and Sandline appeared in African conflicts, marketing rapid stabilization to governments overwhelmed by insurgencies. Then came Iraq and Afghanistan. Massive reconstruction, long supply chains, and shortages of uniformed troops created a contractor boom. PMCs provided convoy security, base defense, interpreters, maintenance, and training. Simultaneously, maritime security took off amid piracy near the Horn of Africa, with armed teams riding commercial vessels or stationing on floating armories. The legacy? We normalized outsourcing the monopoly on violence. Once a taboo, it became an industry, with lobbyists, insurance, compliance officers, and rate cards like any other business. In a moment, we'll break down how a PMC bid is priced and the hidden line items clients rarely question. Inside the business model. At its core, a PMC sells risk transfer. The client defines outcomes: protect a site, move a convoy, train a battalion, and the PMC prices people, gear, intel, insurance, legal exposure, and extraction plans. Contracts often include indemnification clauses, non-disclosure agreements, and jurisdiction provisions that keep disputes in arbitration rather than public courts. That's the clause I teased. The arbitration plus NDA combo lets clients say no comment while problems get buried in confidential proceedings. Staffing is tiered. You'll see ex-special operations at the top, seasoned conventional veterans, and third country nationals for logistics, perimeter security, or static posts. Day rates reflect experience, risk level, and weapon authorization. The kit, everything from non-lethal tools and armored vehicles to ISR drones, satellite comms, and counter-IED gear, depending on the mission. Profit comes from day rates and overheads, management fees, equipment lease markups, travel/per diem, medical evacuation coverage, and contingency buffers. The optimization puzzle is ugly. How much risk can you accept before insurance becomes unaffordable? Or worse, lives are on the line? Coming up, The one scenario where even the best PMC walks away, and why walking can be more ethical than winning. Who hires them and why? Governments hire PMCs to fill gaps, fast. Need linguists, EOD techs, or site security next month. A contract can do what recruitment can't. Corporations, especially in extractives and infrastructure, hire PMCs to secure pipelines, mines, and remote camps, often where state policing is weak. International organizations and some NGOs use unarmed or defensive services to protect staff and aid convoys. The sales pitch emphasizes flexibility, deniability, and often cost shifting. The state avoids long-term pensions and benefits. The company expedites operations, and everyone keeps political fingerprints light. But that deniability has a price. Public oversight evaporates, and human rights obligations can slip into contractual gray zones. In 60 seconds, we'll examine a real case where a PMC's withdrawal triggered a security vacuum, and how a single clause made replacement almost impossible. Case study: executive outcomes in the 1990s. In the mid-1990s, executive outcomes, staffed by experienced veterans, contracted in Angola and later Sierra Leone, where government forces were being outmatched. EO supplied combat experienced teams, helicopter support, and training that rapidly shifted battlefield momentum. Their defenders claim EO stabilized areas fast. Critics argue the model commodified violence and tied security to resource concessions. What this case shows is the speed premium. A conventional coalition might take months to deploy. A PMC can land, plug a capability gap, and score tactical wins in weeks. But what happens when the contract ends? If local forces aren't ready, security collapses, and civilians pay the price. Next, the incident that redefined oversight for PMCs and triggered years of legal battles. Case study: a Baghdad intersection and a global backlash. In the late 2000s, an infamous shooting at a Baghdad traffic circle by contractors working for a major PMC left civilians dead and ignited international outrage. The legal saga that followed, prosecutions, appeals, and political controversy, exposed how murky jurisdiction could be in a war zone. Was it self-defense or excessive force? Which courts applied? Which rules of engagement? The fallout reshaped training standards, weapon authorization rules, and contract oversight. It proved that one incident can cost a client legitimacy, trigger diplomatic blowback, and erode local support for the mission. It also taught PMCs that brand damage can be existential. Rebranding, restructuring, and compliance became survival tools. Right after maritime security, we'll reveal the quiet tool insurers use to control PMC behavior without passing a single law: pirates, premiums, and floating armories. As piracy spiked off Somalia, shipping firms hired armed teams. The calculus was brutal but simple. A successful hijacking could cost millions, while having a vetted 4-person team on board drastically cut the risk. PMCs adapted. Some staged from floating armories, others integrated radar watch, citadel procedures, and non-lethal deterrence. Incidents dropped, insurers cut premiums for ships with compliant security, and the sector wrote a quiet playbook for private defense that actually worked. Clear rules, industry standards, and insurer leverage. Stay with me, because that insurer leverage is the secret sauce behind the scenes in almost every PMC contract. Law, loopholes, and the Montreux moment. What law governs PMCs? It's a patchwork. There's the Montreux document, a non-binding text outlining states' obligations when hiring PMCs, and industry initiatives like the International Code of Conduct for private security providers. Some countries license contractors. Some extend military law extraterritorially. Others rely on host nation law, which can be weak. The loopholes hide in jurisdiction and contract design. Choose arbitration in a friendly venue, layer NDAS, subcontract across borders, and disputes vanish from public view. This is where insurers come in. They require training standards, incident reporting, and use of force policies as conditions for coverage. Denied coverage equals no contract. In practice, insurers often enforce stricter behavior than regulators because payouts are expensive. Up next, the frontier where PMCs don't carry rifles at all. They carry laptops, drones, data, and the quiet private war. Modern PMCs sell ISR as a service. Drones, aerostats, satellite feeds, and analytics that fuse imagery, signals, and open-source intelligence. The rifle isn't always the point. Information is. A handful of analysts in a safe city can direct convoy routes, predict ambush patterns, and triage threats for clients halfway across the world. Then there's cyber. Some firms offer threat hunting, digital forensics, and recon on adversary networks, staying on the legal side of penetration testing but dancing near the line that separates defense from offense. Meanwhile, drone pilots and EW technicians become the new elite contractors. The deliverable is precision. Fewer boots in danger, more signal than noise. The world is messy. Crises don't wait for perfect public institutions. PMCs fill real gaps, protecting aid workers, diplomats, and critical infrastructure. But when profit meets force, oversight can't be optional. If we demand outcome-based contracts, transparent reporting, and independent audits, we can push this industry out of the shadows and into the rule of law. If this deep dive helped you understand the architecture of modern privatized security, hit like, share it, and tell me in the comments. Should offensive combat roles be off-limits to PMCs? And if you want episodes on maritime security, cyber contractors, or how insurance shapes warfare, subscribe and ring the bell, because the next chapter of this shadow world is already being written.